but see it when it's on the computer. I have to have it in my hands. I'm a little too old. So I I just organized everything and I cross-referenced, and because I'd never taken the notes with any organizational. And I ended up with multiple file cabinets, which have been in this house for, I guess I was already in this house when I started working on it. And recently I wanted to get rid of the file cabinet, so I put it into banker's boxes, and I had 16 boxes
Oh,
like that. Now, bear in mind, a lot of it was duplicated because it was cross-referenced. And then at some point, I was standing near those boxes and I realized that even though I have a lot of friends, if I died without dealing with all those notes, their annoyance with me would follow me to the astral world. Inconceivably even be active in our next incarnation. I mean, I just hadn't really cognized what it was because I used a lot of it to write Light Bear, but there was just an enormous amount left. So I've actually spent, or do we have any extra chairs? Because we have, oh, yeah, because there's some chairs over here. Um, uh, so I started actually 3 years ago. I took the month of August. I think I was at your house. I went down to your house by the sea. And I mostly just sorted and just started reading and seeing what was in there. And then last year I took a month at the seclusion retreat, and this time I took almost 6 weeks. And last year I started transferring all those notes into a publishable form, into a manuscript. And I was very lucky that I found out, because there's a lot of cross-referencing and a lot of it was chronology that was not that was widely available, not unique to my experience, that the real book that I'm trying to do is in 4 boxes. And I finished it. I mean, I have a manuscript. It's about 100,000 words, which is half the length of Light Bearer, which is a very big book. I had some statistics. Swamiji's book, The New Path, is like 170,000 words. And the autobiography, Master's original autobiography and Swami's New Path are like within 200 words of each other.
yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. My book, Light Bearer, is 220,000. So I couldn't quite get it down. I couldn't match their thing. But anyway, so I was there up in this little cabin just out in the middle of nowhere at the meditation retreat, way out near Devotion, where those of you know the cabin. It was very funny when I came back here. I was very surprised because Anaya told me that her niece had had her baby while I was gone. And I felt like I'd been gone for one day. And it was like, how did the mother finish the pregnancy? Because I just stepped completely out of life. And then my life didn't begin again until I walked back in here. And the process of going through all those notes, it was absolutely fascinating to me and wonderfully fun. This began earlier, but it's like everything that I know is somewhere in those notes. It's like everything I learned from Swami, but even more oddly, if I can say it, it's like who I am is in those notes. It's because my whole life has been molded to try to be a disciple and to try to just absorb into myself this as a way of life. There was an exchange that Swamiji had that I actually came to understand more deeply. This would have been, it doesn't matter when, it was, about 2009 or something like that, when I was writing the book of Miracles and Answered Prayers. And Swami was writing, the Guadalupe book, Pilgrimage to Guadalupe, where the pilgrim goes around and he meets all these different kinds of people and they have all these wonderful question and answer discussions. So in that, I wrote to him, he sent me the manuscript and I read it, parts of it as he was working. And I said, it's so wonderful to have all these different questions and answers and have them all answered with Master's teachings. And I got back from Swami this very emphatic email that said, I don't know anywhere in this book where I've quoted any of Master's teachings. And which I haven't looked at the book to think this through, but what he was, and then there was a parallel, and this was what happened when I was reading through all these different notes. After Master died, some prominent visitor came to Mount Washington, and the senior nun, who shall remain nameless, who hosted the guest, wanted the guest to meet Master. So she read to him for a while out of different books of Master's teaching. And so what Swami was saying back in his letter, and also when he said at that time, Master is not the words that he spoke. He's not even really the teachings that he gave us. What he is that he's a whole understanding of life and a whole response to everything that happens to you. And what was so interesting as I was going through all these notes is the ideas that were in the notes. I've just been spouting them, saying them so long and so much, but they're not even ideas anymore. They're just exactly what Swami was saying. It's an understanding of life. It's an attitude toward everything that happens. I mean, that's what you really become when you become a disciple. You don't convey that just by saying the words. The words may prompt that in you, but it was very gratifying to me to do all this. And it was also quite depressing at times because Swami was always very gentle with me because I had a tendency to collapse into despair if I was poked too hard. But I found in 1998 this very for me a very stern reprimand for some fundamental attitude that I had been expressing the whole time that he had known me, which is all of my adult life at that point. But I had it. I was really dismayed by it because 1998 seems really recently to me. Partly because I have it was when we were at the end of the litigation, and I have such vivid pictures of that period of time. But it's almost exactly the center. It was 27 years after I started, and there have been 27 years since 1998. Or yes, or maybe a little less than that. But it was also just this realization of how extremely long this process is. Because it isn't just a matter of understanding the teachings, the difference between Nirvikalpa and Salvakalpa Samadhi, and what is a Jivan Mukta, and what is a Siddhi, and all sorts of other things I still don't understand. It's much more, it's just integrating into ourselves what it means to be a disciple, to live for God, to have from our bone marrow out that this is just the way that we live. And it was very gratifying. I felt very gratified to just see my whole life, because really it is my whole life since I started doing all this so early. And a great deal of what was in those notes is not revolutionary anymore. In 1974, when I heard it for the first time, it was so exciting, I wrote it down. But then he wrote 5 books on the subject after that. His books weren't even written when I started. But the other side of it, just so impressively, is what an amazing teacher he was. And what an amazing example he was of just so many different aspects. So what I've tried to collect, and I do, and I'm going to actually share some of it with you, is those things that, and much more than I realized when I was collecting all this, it's really about him. It's not just his own words. Most of the book, probably 3/4 of the book, even more than Lightbearer, is just his own words in one form or another. And so what I've done is collected. I have in my notes Swami's description of how he wrote about Master. How he collected different ideas, how he wrote Essence of Self-Realization, how he wrote Conversations. So that's exactly what I've done. I've just collected all the different sections. That's the part I have to work on more. but so that we have a continuous narrative on different subjects, even though they weren't said at the same time at all, with some of my filling in about why it mattered, what happened there. So I feel it was also just, to share with you as brothers and sisters, it was really being in seclusion like that for 5 weeks. And I wasn't in strict seclusion because I had to come out and do Instagram stuff once a week and things like that. But, and you always have to be online and you always have to be ready to take phone calls. But I really realized, I really realized that I'm old. Not in the sense that I feel diminished, but that I can really enter into a different phase of life. That just the feeling that I don't have to be exactly the same until the end. And it was very liberating for me. I first realized that during COVID, when people considered me to be a vulnerable old lady. And instead of being able to go out and get groceries for everyone else, I had to sit here and have them delivered. It was extremely shocking. I see all of you of my vintage are all nodding your heads in the same way. But I saw it again much more deeply, that, this is a different phase of life. But because, as all of you know, we're in a controversy over this property, and I'm in the middle of that with the lawyers, so I won't be going anywhere for as long as that takes. But still, there was a feeling of liberation that I hope to hold on to, just to be able to keep doing this. We'll see. I also I have this book to finish, and then I have 2 books that were basically collected off of the internet from all the questions and answers I've been doing there. And this whole other thing that we did there where it was quotes and captions. And so both of those Ram Bhakta has brought up to a point. So I'm going to try to do a lot more writing in the coming year. And I don't know if I can do it here or if I have to leave, we'll have to see. So I don't suppose there's any questions. I would like to just read some stuff to you. Is that okay? Do you mind if I do that? Partly because, I think it's entertaining, but I don't know if anybody else will.
We'll let you know.
Yes, thank you. Okay, some of this are more trivial. I'm going to start with one that's a little trivial. I love this. Okay. This is just about Swami's personality. Oh, this is a very long one. Okay. Some of them are 1 page. This one is quite long. So Swami starts out, I called this friendship. This is just my category. Swami, this is quoting him. Swami says, I have a perfectly good watch. I don't have to wind it. It's waterproof. It glows in the dark. Now a woman friend, newly widowed, has given me this gold watch. It has great sentimental value to her. She gave it to me in secret because she wants it to go to me rather than to their adopted son. It is considered to be the best watch in the world, but I have to wind it. It isn't waterproof and it doesn't glow in the dark. Despite these obvious drawbacks, Swamiji put away his own watch and without complaint for many years wore that gold watch for the sake of the widow. And she was not even in the same country where he is most of the time. And then I say, yogis sometimes wear a navratna, a bangle with 9 gems, a specific one for each of the 9 planets. In the yogic tradition, based on Vedic astrology, such a bangle strengthens the positive and helps protect against any negative planetary influences. The gem should be no less than 2 carats and as flawless as possible. Gems come in varying sizes and qualities, so there is a wide range of possible cost. Still, it is not an inexpensive thing. As a young monk and SRF, Swami felt inwardly guided that he should have such a bangle, even though his monastic allowance was $15 a month, which even in the 1950s was not much money compared to a 9-gem bangle. Although somehow, by the grace of God, he managed to obtain a navratna. Not first quality gems, but sufficient. In the late 1960s, when he was starting Ananda, he sold it to pay for the buildings. A decade later, a wealthy woman came to live at Ananda. When she heard that Swamiji had sold his bangle to build the community, she felt called to give him $10,000 to replace it. This would have been the late 70s. Harold, a relative of mine, was a jeweler in Southern California. For the next few months, we worked with him to find the appropriate gems. He was like my godfather, and not godfather like mafia, but kind of.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, a slightly East Coast, a Jewish man, a slightly East Coast accent. So he would go around to all these places. He says, "My daughter's guru, he needs some jewels." So he was going all around Southern California. He was retired by then. My daughter's guru, he needs some jewels. Harold really got into the spirit of it, and he worked very hard to find good stones at good prices. The diamond he got from his cousin who had a pawn shop in Ohio. In those days, you could safely send gems through registered mail, and about once a week, a padded envelope would arrive with a few emeralds or rubies or sapphires. And Swami would meditate with each gem, pray over them, and then choose the one he felt was right for him. Master said he remembered his previous incarnations all the way back to when he was a diamond. Yes, that opens up whole Pandora's box of other questions, which I never got to ask. Suffice to say, gemstones have individuality, which, if you are sensitive, you can feel. Swamiji was looking for his friends among the stones he had to choose from. Eventually, he had 9 beautiful gemstones, and it was time to have them set into a bangle. The stones themselves were sufficiently eye-catching. Unless you know something about Vedic astrology, it is not what you expect a renunciate to wear. To lessen the impact, Swamiji planned to set the stones in a narrow, plain silver band. He also hoped that would leave some money left over that he could go into the fund to build a new retreat, which was a very important project for Ananda at that time. The only reason he was buying the bangle was because the donor had insisted on giving him money for that purpose. Swamiji knew that in his role as leader, whatever strengthened and harmonized his magnetism would have a positive, uplifting effect on the whole community. He accepted her insistence as Divine Mother's will. Harold, who had become quite personally involved in this very unusual project, had a completely different idea for the setting. Harold was a very nice man, but his taste was ostentatious. The very idea of setting those stones in silver was unthinkable to him. He had been so generous in his help, we couldn't have done it without him, that Swamiji did not feel to go against his wishes. Here we are again. So he left the setting entirely in his hands. When the bangle arrived, it was everything Swami did not want. Not only was it gold, it was beaten gold, that has that shimmery look to it, which was even more striking. And instead of being narrow, it was fully 3/4 of an inch wide. It was absolutely gorgeous. And it was fit for a king. In many past lives, Swamiji has been a king. So when he first put it on, even though he was dressed casually, just sitting in the living room, the kingly bangle suited him perfectly. After wearing it for a few hours, he said he felt a definite spiritual effect. Later, he did a private ceremony, stone by stone, praying to the presiding deity of each planet, asking God and gurus to bless the bangle that it be of spiritual benefit. When you buy a gemstone, you don't know who has owned it before and in what circumstances. In India, it is understood that a cleansing ceremony is needed to remove any unhappy vibrations that the stones may have picked up in the past. They feel like happy stones, Swamiji said. That's why I chose them. I could feel their positive energy. And after the ceremony, he said they were even more magnetic. Setting it in gold used up every remaining dollar of the $10,000. Swamiji said he was given to be a bangle, and Divine Mother made sure her intention was honored. One of the drawbacks of having such a striking bangle was that it was quite noticeable whenever Swamiji wore short sleeves. One doesn't want to tempt others who might covet it for themselves. Swamiji soon found that it was so unusual, especially in the West, that it seemed more like costume jewelry than the authentic piece it was. A stranger in a restaurant noticed the bangle and exclaimed, "Wow, is that real?" Which prompted from Swamiji the response he used ever after. "It certainly looks real, doesn't it?" Harold had no connection to Ananda, never visited, never would visit. He wouldn't have known if Swami had reset the bangle in a simpler way, but Swamiji never considered doing that. In gratitude for Harold's kindness, he wore that bangle for many years and only changed it after Harold died. Interesting. This is a totally different tone. A woman in the community was given a prominent role in a public presentation, but she didn't have the spiritual maturity to carry the role effectively. Her presence weakened the magnetism of the whole event. The one who gave her that role defended his decision, saying, but now she feels much more part of Ananda. Swamiji said, she didn't really feel part of Ananda as it actually is. Rather, his decision redefined Ananda to match her limitations. No surprise that within a year that woman left Ananda for another way of life. Swami says, you can't make up a definition of the spiritual path or create an imaginary idea of master and then say you are in tune because you are in tune with your own projection. You have to lift yourself up to the level of the masters and attune to their actual vibration. This was only one incident, but Swami responded strongly to it because it represented a direction he did not support. It is the Ananda way to try to help everyone who sincerely asks. But some people who may want to live in the community have more magnetism to pull Ananda off course than we have to bring them into attunement. We have to be realistic and not just affirm a power we may not have. It needs to be a two-way exchange of energy, Swami said. There has to be a certain nobility in the other person. Otherwise, no matter how much you give, it will never bring the result you hope for. Master told us that after he was gone, we would have to be more discriminating about who we accepted. He had the magnetism to hold things together in a way that we would not be able to do. This is also true for Ananda. I am able to hold many disparate elements together, but you will not be able to do that. Isn't that interesting? You see how fun these are? This is just very short. An Italian devotee dreamed that Swami had a dream in which Swami was stroking his face. Great power flowed from Swamiji into the devotee's heart, that even after he woke up, he felt it there. The next day, before he could tell Swamiji about the dream, Swamiji said to him, last night I was thinking of you. Yeah, isn't that dear? Oh, this is this one about, let me see how long this is. This is too long, I'll skip it. I'm going to leave the notebook out here if you want to see it. Oh, this one is so funny. There's a lot of lightness in here, but there's also serious. This was Swamiji. This is a story Swamiji tells about himself. I called an 800 number to make an airline reservation. I explained what I needed, but instead of the woman responding, there was a long silence. Hello, hello, are you there? Can you help me? She replied, that voice. What a voice. Swami says, that's all very nice, but what about my airline reservation? You've got to understand, I hear thousands of voices, and I've never heard a voice like yours. Are you married? And as it happened, yes, as a matter of fact, I am. Those was during the 7 years he was with Rosanna. Now, about my reservation, happily married. Yes, and you're probably 65. As it happens, I am. So Swami laughed so happily when he told this story. He said, I thought she might be attracted to Master's teachings through my voice, so I tried to talk a little bit about it, but I don't think she really was. Oh dear. Oh dear. Let's see. I'm inclined to just tell you the funny ones, but I should do some more serious ones. Let me just see what we have here. Oh, this is sweet. A newcomer to Ananda, I put in dates when it was relevant, 1984, received from Swamiji a great deal of attention and respect. He seemed to have a lot of faith in her spiritual future. Gradually, it became obvious that the woman had serious character flaws and was unsuited for Ananda life. Within a year, she was gone. Someone said to Swamiji, "You were fooled. You never saw her clearly." "Not at all," Swami replied. "I knew those seeds were there and it would be hard work to dig them out. I related to her as I do to everyone in terms of her potential, not her limitations. It takes a large person to have large faults. When those faults are overcome, true greatness can emerge." Yes, it is hard work to help someone like that, but it's worth the effort. Yeah. Oh, I love this poem here. I'm just going to give you a piece of this. This is all about, well, I'll put more in it. All sentient beings, including animals, are for Swamiji just egos on a spectrum, moving from delusion to freedom in God. In a higher age, animals could be saints. Lahiri Mahashaya was working on a technique for liberating animals directly without their having to go through human bodies. It is said that a cow in Ramana Maharshi's ashram was liberated. There is a shrine in the ashram dedicated to the cow's Mahasamadhi, a yogi's final conscious exit from the body. I actually know more about that now. They think that it was a reincarnation of this woman who used to take care of him. But that's a difference. You can look that up online. It's worth looking up. Cow who was liberated at Ramana Maharshi's ashram. Swamiji was not as attuned to animals as some people are, but he was always willing to help them if he could. His usual greeting to a dog, offered in friendship without judgment, and it would be like this. He would say, "Hello, beast." Very loving way, but just sort of, inquiring as to who they were. Some animals, he said, are very close to the human level. They may be on the way up, just about to transition into a human body, or on the way down. Master said that sometimes people who behave in an animalistic way are thrown back into animal bodies, but usually for only a short time. Some animals are former humans taking a rest from the more demanding level of consciousness. Look how many monkeys look just like people. For humans, much suffering is on the mental level. Why is this happening to me? Animals suffer, but not in that way. They don't have the ego awareness to know that it's they themselves who are suffering. They know something is wrong, but have no clear idea of what it is, and they don't take it personally as humans do. One time, Swamiji shared an unusual experience. For the last few days, he said, I have been tuned into the consciousness of dogs. Animals are just human beings in another kind of body. We are not all that different. Later at a satsang, he spoke about dog consciousness, but this time he became a channel for that consciousness. I was there. His human face changed into that of a dog. Fortunately, it only lasted for a minute because your features are your consciousness. When humans are happy, we smile, Swami said. When dogs are happy, they wag their tails. Both are expressing positive energy, but from opposite ends of the spine. Swamiji said that Master's appearance in some subtle way often matched whoever he was with, whether male, female, portly, or frail. When Swamiji briefly took on the appearance of a dog, there was no other dog in the room to influence him. But the next day on the street, we saw his canine doppelganger. Is that how you pronounce it? The dog had exactly the same expression that Swamiji did the night before. We were on holiday with Swamiji, uh, sitting in a restaurant in Spain. It was the off season and we were the only customers. The place was impeccably clean, but there was one fly which kept landing on Swamiji's forehead. He would shoo it away, but immediately would come back. Finally, it rested for a moment on the table near him. Swami leaned over to be closer to the fly, then kindly but firmly said, "Please don't bother me anymore." The fly hovered around a bit longer, landing a few times close to his face, but on the shoulder of his jacket, where it wouldn't disturb Swamiji. Then it flew away. Oh dear. Let's see. Well, this is a serious one. It was September 12th, 2008, the 60th anniversary of the day Swamiji was initiated by Master as a disciple. A group of community leaders was enjoying afternoon tea with Swamiji. Several years earlier, he had resigned from his official role within Ananda, giving most of his duties to Jyotish and Devi. When one of the devotees commented, "You've passed the baton on to us," it seemed a reasonable thing to say. Swamiji, however, felt differently. Something about the tone of voice, the attitude of the speaker, or the implications of the remark itself prompted from him a forceful response. "I've written 91 books. How many have you written?" The question was addressed to everyone in the room, not just the person who made the comment. A few were published authors, but nothing to compare with him. "I've composed 400 pieces of music. How many have you written?" Once again, we all came up short. "I founded 8 communities. How many communities have you founded?" Most of us were founding members of Ananda Village, and a few had helped start other communities as well. So we were on slightly firmer ground, but not by much. What Swamiji wanted us to understand was that, as disciples, the Guru always holds the baton. Swamiji never felt authority had even passed from Master to him. He acted only on Master's behalf. He wanted us to understand that our role was not to take Swamiji's place, but to build on what he had done, as he had built on the foundation Master laid for him and for all of us. A few months earlier, as a birthday present to Swamiji, devotees from Ananda Palo Alto put on a play based on his story, The Singer and the Nightingale. The story includes 2 songs, and for the play, we added several more and a few dances as well. When I introduced the performance at Ananda Village for his birthday, I said, "We are following Swamiji's guidance and building on the creative work he has done." The play was a small example of a very important direction for Ananda, but Swamiji felt it was worth underscoring. From the audience, he began to applaud. It is the duty of disciples to express the teachings of the Guru, each in their own way, guided and inspired by their attunement with the Master. This is what Swamiji wanted us to understand. He is our link to Master. Ananda is part of the great work Master commissioned him to do. None of us are destined to be the kind of leader and teacher that he has been, but we can do what he has done with Master, tune in and build on what they have created. This is far different from passing the baton. Interesting. Oh, here's one too. This is serious too. This might have been me, but I don't have it clear, so I'm going to pretend it's not. The note had changed it to the masculine, but sometimes when a story was about myself, I would make it impersonal because sometimes it mattered that it was me. Much of the time, it didn't make any difference who it was. It was the point. So I'm going to pretend this isn't me, but a little piece of me thinks it is. A team of people were working together on a project for Swamiji. One man strongly disagreed with the proposed strategy, but he was overridden. When the agreed upon plan was presented to Swamiji, that man was conspicuously silent. Afterwards, Swamiji asked him to stay back so they could talk privately. "The way you behaved wasn't helpful," Swamiji said sternly. "I didn't say a word," the man protested. "But your silence spoke volumes. It made everyone uncomfortable. You can't just think in terms of words. You also have to consider the power of thought and how your thoughts will make other people feel. If we don't consider the feelings of others, we will lose everything." All through the meeting, Swami said he could feel him mentally criticizing the other members of the team, and his strong negative thoughts so disturbed the atmosphere that creative work was impossible. Isn't it interesting? I don't think it was me, actually. I would have remembered. You'll love this one. All of you will like this one. It's not funny. It was a small satsang, 1996, with Swamiji and a few core members. One woman said, "Even when I sit to meditate, my mind is so active. Help." Others nodded in agreement. She wasn't the only one. "Given the life we have to live," Swamiji said, "it is too much to expect mental stillness. Master has given us a job to do. We have to build his work. It would be nice to sit to meditate and have the mind go quiet, but I don't see any of us going into samadhi. I'm not. If I were, I don't think I would even want to do the work I have to do. When I think of how you are doing spiritually, I don't look for mental stillness. I look for purity of heart. And you are all doing beautifully. Your natures are becoming more and more transparent. Freedom of heart, that is what your meditation is giving you. The rightness of the life we have doesn't have to prove itself through ecstasies and samadhis. Divine Mother has another plan for us. Even when we meditate, the inspiration that comes to us almost always goes toward our service. If we had ecstatic visions, that's where we would stay. The whole focus of the Carmelite mission, he said as an example, is on the inner life. At Ananda, it is not our time for that, unless God individually inspires you to live that way. Our role is to show that people can live a more natural life in the world and still have God. Ananda gives people hope in a way we wouldn't be able to do if we lived like the barefoot Carmelites. Isn't it interesting? There's several that are like that, where he, oh, here's just, this is just silly. Swami told this to us when he was in the middle of the SRF lawsuit, and his body was always freaking out for various things, and something happened, and he pulled a muscle in his groin. That's what it was. And then there was this chaos in his apartment, and he made it worse. And then Dr. Peter came and finally just gave him some narcotics because it was just so bad. And then Swami was drifting off in this sort of drug-induced haze, and he started telling us the plots of several movies that he'd enjoyed. Then he started talking about his trip to Mexico when he was 19, and this just paragraph came out of there. "When I was in Mexico at the age of 19, for a short time I was engaged to a girl I met there. When I told her that I wanted to find truth, that I didn't want to worry about making money, and I would be willing to marry her only if she were willing to starve with me if necessary, he lost interest." Oh, I love this one too. Now that I have a very broad internet presence, this is very short. "The majority of people are wrong most of the time. If you ever become famous, keep that in mind." This was interesting. Without any involvement, supervision, or permission from Ananda village, a man in another city organized and ran a group which he presented as an Ananda center. No one felt to interfere with what he was doing until he appointed himself spiritual director for life. At that point, Swamiji invited the man to come to the village, to talk about the work he was doing. Over a leisurely lunch, they had a long and interesting discussion about many topics, including what the man was doing with his Ananda group. Swamiji was very gracious, positive, supportive, not critical or demanding. Eventually, though, Swamiji pointed out that, in fact, he himself was Ananda's spiritual director for life. So if this man wanted that position, then he should not use Ananda's name. The man went home, kept his position, but changed the name of his group. Later, Swamiji said, "No one with any spunk is going to sit around waiting for headquarters to tell them what to do. They will always be doing more than we feel comfortable with." And actually, I didn't put this in here, but Swami also said, "I'd much rather have a man like that, because then you have energy to work with." Otherwise, you have no energy to work with. Master went along with whatever energy he had to work with. He shared the platform with all sorts of people. This is when he was going around the country. He often had other people there with him. One fellow would suspend himself between two chairs and have someone break a board across his stomach. This is on the same dais with Master. Another buried himself for days in the sand. These are the ones Master had to work with, so he did. Swami says elsewhere, let's see, Master followed opportunities as they presented themselves. If the opportunity had the same vibration, was a compatible vibration to what he was doing, he would just follow it and see where it would go, rather than having had a fixed idea. This is at the Festival of the Joyful Arts in June of 2003. Swami spoke about how God has a special song to sing through each one of us. We have to lift our energy up to the superconscious and be creatively ourselves. As Ananda examples, he mentioned Christy Norfleet, who wrote those beautiful songs, Dana Anderson, and Bharat's Sharing Nature. They are doing things that aren't exactly what Ananda's doing, but they're using superconscious creative energy to do it. And for that reason are notable examples of what Swamiji would like to see in all of us do, each in our own way. He also talked about Stephen Gaskin, who was the great hippie guru in San Francisco in the late 60s and 70s. And then they did a caravan of school buses across the United States and ended up in Tennessee and started The Farm in Tennessee. Swami met and Stephen crossed paths in San Francisco a lot, and they both really liked each other. I have to put this in here. I think somewhere I read recently that actually Swami did a healing on Stephen, that he was very unwell and Swami blessed him and healed him. Now, where is that note? Okay, he also talked about Stephen Gaskin, Swami did, at the Joyful Arts Festival, the founder of The Farm in Tennessee. He is completely himself, Swamiji said. He was an English professor, yet he spoke in a very folksy, ungrammatical way. He stood for many things Swamiji didn't care for, like rock and roll music, which Stephen liked because of the high energy. He even stood for things that Swami was against, like marijuana, and for a time, group marriage. I was present when someone said to Stephen Gasson, because they abandoned their idea of group marriage, they said, I understand you've given up on group marriage. Why have you given up on it? He said, it don't work. It's pretty decisive. Anyway, but Swamiji said, I just love the man. He was so completely himself. Swami was so moved just talking about him that he actually became choked up with emotion. And he had to stop for a moment until he mastered himself sufficiently to go on. It's just, it's not a tiny world. Oh, this was fun. In Autobiography of a Yogi, speaking of Babaji, Master says, the casual gaze may see nothing extraordinary in an avatar's form. This is Master from the AY, but it casts no shadow nor makes any footprint on the ground. I asked Swamiji, did Master cast a shadow? Swami replied, when I asked Master the same question about Sri Yukteswar, he looked at me somewhat reproachfully and said, I never noticed. Why then, this is Swami speaking, why then did Master put that line into the autobiography? It is the chapter about Babaji, but he says on avatar. Master was an avatar, Sri Yukteswar was an avatar. Master defines avatar as someone who is fully liberated, who comes back into a physical body. Babaji, however, is a special case. In one incident, Babaji was present, but Sri Yukteswar didn't see him until Lahiri Mahashaya touched him. Then he was suddenly visible. Babaji said to Sri Yukteswar, your gaze is not yet faultless. You could not see me hiding behind the sunlight. Another question was put to Swamiji. Did Jesus cast a shadow? If he didn't, someone in the Bible would have mentioned it. Swami said, we can assume Jesus did. Avatars usually do. We know of 3 that did. In that statement, Master is referring only to Babaji. He can manifest a body on the gross material level or not. But in either case, it is not a body like you or I have. Swamiji laughed and said jokingly, I wish I could have grabbed Master by the lapels and said, listen, which was it, shadow or no shadow? It is a puzzle. Why mystify us like that? Babaji had disciples with him. When he wanted to move to another mountaintop, he would say, Deradanda Utao, which meant let us lift up our camp and staff. I'm sure his disciples were all in physical bodies, but when Babaji appeared to Ram Gopal at Dasa Summit Ghat, he came in a ball of light. It is a mystery. The other masters, all avatars, have specific bodies with a specific birth and death, whereas Babaji seems a manifestation of another sort. I said, Swamiji, when you write your commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, you could resolve some of these mysteries. I have had the same questions and I don't have an answer, Swamiji said. Why bring it up? We all agreed best to avoid the whole subject. Isn't it just, just like all the things that happened? Okay, shall I go? Should I do any more? Or do you think we've had enough? Swami says, the worldly man thinks of himself as the sole agent of his destiny and feels he always has to make an effort to ensure he will have what he wants. Isn't that an interesting definition of what it is? The disciple, by contrast, sees life not as a random series of events, but a divinely planned unfoldment. Instead of trying to impose his egoic will on life, he strives for attunement with the Guru to cooperate rather than impede that unfoldment. Fascinating. Swami was always very lighthearted about his own accomplishments. I've not really done much, just kept treading water to keep from sinking, and in the process created a few waves. This is one more interesting one. No, so I'll skip that. This is the best. When it came to light that a certain spiritual teacher was behaving in a way that was undharmic, another teacher publicly dissociated from him. By contrast, Swamiji sent word to the man that he could rely on Swamiji's continuing friendship. He is in trouble, Swamiji said. Rather than kicking him while he's down, I would like, if possible, to help him learn from this experience. The man was not a bad person, just weak-willed. And Swamiji knew condemnation would not help him, but he hoped that friendship would. Well, this is fun about women. I'll just look on my last one. Swamiji wrote a series of small books on a variety of subjects. All were titled Secrets of, followed by the specific focus: love, friendship, success, prosperity. As it happened, Ananda was the first in our sector, New Age self-help spirituality, to publish small books of aphorisms. Each volume had one for each day of the month. They were enormously popular and a great help financially to the publishing company. Our main salesman told Swamiji, almost all of these books are bought by women. It would be a service to the customer and great business for us if you could write secrets for women. Swamiji saw the value of such a book, but said he simply didn't know how to write it. But when I woke up the next morning, he said later, the whole thing was there. I became totally immersed in feminine consciousness. At times it was difficult because people would ask me to deal with other things that would have required I come out of that flow. So I simply refused to deal with anything else until the book was done. Fortunately, it's a small book and took only a few days to write. Talking afterwards with a group of women, Swamiji said, when I really felt feminine consciousness, I didn't like it. Then with great sympathy, he said, so much emotion, it was awful. With a rueful laugh, one of the women responded, welcome to our world. Most people incarnate, sometimes Swami says, most people incarnate, sometimes male, sometimes female, in order to learn to balance masculine and feminine qualities. But I feel I attained that balance a long time ago. In all the past life readings I've had and in all my own memories, I've always been a man. I think when I was a woman, it was a long time ago. Then with a laugh, he said to his female listeners, I think being a man is better. Of course, he was only joking. He said, there comes a point where your body is simply not an influence anymore on your spiritual unfoldment. In truth, we are neither man nor woman. Far better to live in that consciousness. You can say, this is what I have to work with, meaning the inclinations of the body. Women are more attuned to feeling, men more inclined toward reason. But don't allow yourself to be defined or limited by that. Someone then asked, why then are all men? Why are all the avatars men? At that point, Swami said the avatar could choose whichever gender he prefers. An avatar comes with a world-changing mission, which is a masculine task. That would lead to assuming a male body, and in most societies, men have more freedom than women, which makes the job easier. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, that was very interesting. Okay, I can go on and on. Is there any? Oh, I'll just give you, this is another one from the Mexico time. This was the same one. When I was 19, I went to Mexico for the summer, same summer. I was in Tasco and there was going to be a dance in the town square. There seemed to be only two young Americans in town, a girl from Boston University and me, so we went together. A young Mexican decided he would take her away from me. I didn't mind. There was no bond between us. She was mean-spirited, not at all expansive. But his method was to ply me with tequila, and I didn't care for that. If he wanted to be with her, he should have won her fair and square, not get me drunk, so I wouldn't notice. So I thought, I'll drink all the tequila he wants to give me, but I won't get drunk. Much of the effect of alcohol is mental, and I set my will not to let it touch me. I drank a whole bottle. And it didn't affect me at all. He said, not even the next morning. There was no hangover. When the dance was over, I invited the man to come along to walk the girl back to her hotel. We dropped her off and continued together to the cheaper hotel where I was staying. When we got there, I had my revenge. I kept him standing outside talking philosophy until 3 a.m. He kept shifting from one foot to the other, but never found a way to leave. He had filled me with tequila and he couldn't just dump me. All the while I was laughing inside. He said, during those years, that was mostly what my friends and I did. We drank, but what we really did was stay up all night talking philosophy. Actually, this will be the last one because this is really sweet. In one of the excoriating letters Swamiji received from an SRF leader, she addressed him as little boy. It was in the 90s. No one but the SRF directors would think to call me that, Swamiji said. Although, in fact, that is how I refer to myself. On his mantelpiece, there was a statue of a little boy angel. Well done, but a very sentimental piece of art. It was a gift from a friend. When it first arrived, I assumed he would give it away. Instead, he put it in a place of honor. It was very intuitive on her part, Swamiji said. She told me she bought it because, quote, it is exactly who you are on the inside. And she was right. No, this is me speaking. When he said this, I realized it had never occurred to me to consider Swamiji from his own point of view about himself. I was too much in awe of his spiritual greatness. It was an important lesson, helping me understand how Swamiji sustains his humility when so much power, wisdom, and profound teachings flow through him to us, and when he receives so much adulation in return. Swamiji wrote about himself. It never even occurs to me to consider myself anyone special for having been commanded by my guru to carry out a special work for him. In other words, I've never placed any value judgment on his commands. Indeed, to take it a step further, I've often thought myself less worthy as a disciple for the fact that he wanted me to do a great work. To me, the fact that I've had to work so hard outwardly has always seemed a sign of my own imperfection. For the goal of yoga is silent inner communion with God. My guru said to me, your life will be one of intense activity and meditation. It was with regret I noted that he put meditation second in my case, as if to give it less importance for me. My nature inclined me toward the life of a hermit. The work I've done in this very busy incarnation, and my accomplishments, if indeed they may be called that, have never defined me as I was in my heart, and have never been centrally important to me. I am, like everyone else, simply a child of God who longs to leave this world of duality behind him forever and to merge in him for eternity. As the years have gone by, this is Asha speaking, as the years have gone by, the thought of Swamiji as that little boy angel has helped me maintain a proper understanding also of myself. Important lessons come in the most unexpected ways. Okay, that's it for now. You think it'll work? Fantastic. Well, I find it very, even though I know all of it already, I find it very moving. It's really about who Swamiji is much more than, I mean, I'm surprised many of the stories are about his character. There's also a lot of teaching that isn't, but even when he's teaching, he's talking about himself because he's telling us what I was saying at the beginning, the understanding and the approach to life that we should have. And what gives his words power is that he exemplifies it. Always how Well,
It's very helpful for people to have an experience of Swami other than his books and his lectures. If you haven't had a chance to meet him, you begin to feel who he is as a person.
You really do, don't you? Doesn't that really, I mean, that gives I could feel it, but of course I can see the stories. It was the same as when I was doing the audiobook for this one. I could just see everything that was going on.
It makes him 3D instead of two-dimensional.
Yeah, that's
what
so.
Like when we saw the old videos of the master as they started to surface, you would think he moves.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're just used to photos. So this makes Swami sort of a 3D human person, which is extremely helpful.
You should have seen Swami's face when he unwrapped that bangle. It was just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with this thing? And it was a conflict because there must have been several of us there because it was so beautiful. And then when he put it on, probably in his Bermuda shorts and his Hawaiian shirt, it just, you could see it. That he was,
Visitors to Ananda and to California.
Say again?
As visitors to
Yeah,
Ananda
and
and
to
California,
Uh-huh.
it's not clear to us the context of your relationship with.
With Swami.
No, could you offer
Just-
that a little bit? Like,
I met Swami. I was 22 years old in 1969. I was already very interested in self-realization as a path. I was first introduced to the teachings of India 1965 through Ramakrishna when I was 18. But I had no way to make that practical. Friends of mine, actually, Purushottam's wife, Lakshmi. I knew Lakshmi at that time. We all lived here. I've lived in this part of the world forever. And she told me she met Swami Kriyananda. She said, I've met a real teacher and I think you'll like him. So I went over to Stanford with a group of friends, and he walked into this tent at the Beta Chi fraternity house where they were hosting him. And I just recognized him. And I recognized in his consciousness what I wanted to become. And in my life, he was the first person I had ever met who I felt knew what they were doing as a human being, and that I wanted to be like them. My inner voice said, he has what I want. He just walked in, he hadn't even spoken. And I realized as I reflected, he was joyous, he was free, well, those were the two things. Consciousness was just without boundaries. I was in the last row because the people I was with were more hesitant than I. And when Swami started to speak, he was right there. I mean, like but what I realized afterwards, what is just his aura was so big, just went right past me. And I had karma that I had to sort out. So it was a little more than a year after that. I moved up to what was Ananda village up in Nevada City, which is about 4 hours from here. It was just absolutely primitive beginnings of this community there. I moved up there 1971, and I have done nothing else with my life but that. I lived in that community for 16 years, and I've been in this one for whatever it is, 30 or 40 at this point. I've never had another job. I've never done anything. And Swami took me in as his secretary at the very beginnings for a few years. Then he cast me out of that and had me start being a public speaker at a retreat and all that. And that's, and I just worked closely with him for 45 years, basically. Email, telephone, traveling, all visiting him all over the world, wherever he was. He passed in 2013. And he gave me this assignment. He very sweetly called me his biographer at the very end. And it turned out I've written 2 books about him, and this is the third. So does that help? Yeah.
And then Ananda communities would sprout based on need, interest, funding.
In response to when there's people who want them. You can't impose it. Yeah, it's what people want it. You can't. You can go with a plan, but if you can write it all down, but if there's nobody there who wants it. So everything grows out of friendship.
He asked you to help start this one, right?
Pardon me?
He asked you to help start.
Well, this one started in 1981 when we bought East West Bookstore, which was then in Menlo Park. And there was a mansion, a regular mansion.
Atherton House.
The Atherton House. I was trying to get the words. We always lived in the best neighborhoods and the biggest houses. Chidambar was in that house. John Petrulio, were you in that house? No? Okay. Ananda and Bar ran that house for a while, yeah. And then this all came about.
Was there a Los Altos Hills house?
Well, let's see. We got kicked out of the Atherton house.
Yeah.
Moved to the road.
And then we got a big mansion in Los Altos. And then we got several small houses in a few other places.
The neighbors would see 24 cars parked in front of a single family home and wondered what's going on.
In San Francisco, when Swami started, they had a 3-bedroom house in the Sunset with Swami in the motorhome on the street with a big extension cord going into the. And then they converted the garage into some kind of sleeping quarters. And the neighbors were just like this the whole time. One of the neighbors asked about the girls who live in the garage. I don't know what they thought was going on. But then we moved into a better neighborhood. We moved up to Pacific Heights. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Sounds pretty polished already. How long
I'm
do you
actually
think it'll
quite
take to
surprised.
finish?
No, I'm quite surprised. Actually, this is, everything that I read came out of the part that I had edited. Yeah. No, but the last days that I was there, I realized I was finished, and I just went back to page 1 and started through. I have about a few more, 10 or 20 more stories that I found recently, but
Do you have a title that you've settled on yet?
I call it more. I'm not sure that has a lot of magnetism. That's what it is in my computer.
Not the final version.
I'm sorry, I just said, is it an acronym?
No,
Oh,
just kidding.
not yet. Thank you all for coming and thank you for listening. It's very, I can feel it when I'm reading it out loud to you that it's going to be okay.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. It's the kind of book you just open anywhere. It'll be slightly organized, but really it's firsthand account of a remarkable life.
Yeah.
And everybody's firsthand account tells you more. Imagine if everybody who knew Jesus had written about it, how happy we would be. If everybody who knew Master had written about it, how happy we would be. Everybody sees a facet of the diamond.
sounds a lot like the essence of self-realization, or at least organized in some.
Well,
way.
it's a pauper's version because of the author, not because of the subject. But it's like Conversations with Yogananda and Essence of Self-Realization. Is essentially Swami was doing exactly what I was doing. He only was with Master for 3.5 years, but he just went through his notes and everything that didn't go into the path. I mean, it's a parallel between what happened with him, what I've been doing, just because there's a divine law about it. When he wrote the path, it wrote itself and only certain things would go in it, and it had a certain just energy to it. When I was writing this one, when I finally was able to write it, I typed it basically. It just was there and I typed it, and there was only certain things fit into it.
You were pointing to light bearer.
Yeah, I'm putting to the stand under my computer. And the furniture. But everything that Swami said that happened with him is just exactly what I've gone through, because it's just the way it is. These great souls have so many aspects of their nature. You have to just pick a thread when you're writing a book like that, like he was writing a book. Otherwise, the book just bogs down. There's no magnetism to it when you just try to put too much into it. But then you have all the rest of this. So you just do exactly what we're doing. Yeah.
We're looking forward to it, Asha.
Well, God willing, I don't have hardly any travel this year. I mean, I have about 4 small trips. Small means, well, the Bahamas is technically, you need a passport, but it doesn't feel like a foreign country. But I have about 4 of those in the school play. But if things turn out the way they do, I might go away for May. I think if I took another month of seclusion, I could get it ready. I don't think I can I know I can't get it ready for the 100th. So everybody and their brother who's written a book is going to have it ready for the 100th. So there's no need for another one. Okay. You don't have to leave. I just don't know what to do. This is just, this is about 80 pages out of the book. I'll just leave it downstairs if anybody, just be around if anybody wants to look at it. Yes.
This isn't yet the 100,000 words you're talking.
No. I just pulled 90 pages out of the book. And just randomly, I just went through and just pulled things out. Have a variety of.
That's your different. Like I hear a lot of your talks, mentions but these feel different.
Yeah.
It's more personal and it's
Surprisingly, yeah.
it's different. You mentioned something.
Very well. Yeah, I could feel that too. There's something, especially just reading it through right now. I don't know. I heard it, so